Andrea, you would remember.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'd like to go. I knew I kind of trailed off.
Yeah.
So I think I guess maybe, I don't even know how to ask my question.
What happens after?
Well, I was actually going to ask your opinion or
Yeah.
how you, that sounds really scary to me. And I'll just use my
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
how, if I'm talking to someone.
Yeah.
It sounds really scary to me to think that the really big struggles that you're dealing with, and you, and we are, that's just a precursor to, because if Satan was released, oh my goodness, imagine what it would be like. So I can imagine all kinds of things I would do in gymnastics I do in my own head, like, well, I just hope I'm dead by the time that happens. But what do you say, or how do you explain that in a way? Because one of my things that I tuck in my heart is that God said He would never leave me or forsake me, which means that He will be with me through whatever might happen. I'm just curious. Again, I understand it's imagery, and
Yeah.
we don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm curious. How would you respond? And I'll say specifically because it's what happens. It comes up more in youth group. How would you respond to a teenager that would say something like, "Oh my gosh, when they unleash Satan, what's going to happen? Or like, what do I do? How am I prepared? That sounds really scary. I'm scared to death. I don't want to close my eyes and go to sleep."
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is the only answer the Bible really gives ultimately, and it gives it to every generation because you can't deny that it may be intense and it may be God showing forth what He has conquered. He shows forth the evil He has suppressed in order to exercise His conquest. But at the same time, and we don't know because the Bible is very general, it just says that at the end there will be this period of almost sovereign control by Satan. And I would say that the answer to it is not that it won't be hard, because I can't say that,
Right.
but that God will give us what strength we need at the time. That's what we're promised. I will not give you a temptation beyond what you are able to bear. And He doesn't drop that promise because of the severity of the testing. He keeps His promise. And so I would say that we'll have a spirit something like old Polycarp. I believe it was Polycarp, who was 81 years old. He was spiritually the grandson of John. There was John, and then his disciple was Irenaeus, and his disciple was Polycarp. So Polycarp lived in the times of Domitian, the emperor, and that was one of the most severe persecutions that the church ever faced, with Domitian. And they got Polycarp, who was a famous leader at that time, and they said, "You're an old man, you're 81 years old, why don't you just deny Him? And we won't press the point. You just say, I don't believe Him, we'll let you go." And he looked him in the eye and said, 81 years have I served Him, and never has He done me wrong. Shall I deny Him now? God gave him the strength to say that. That's about it. When you're going to get thrown at 81 years old to the lions, that's
Yeah.
tough stuff. Let me come back, however, to the question that you've asked about the exactness. First of all, let me read just a confirmation of what you're saying from Acts chapter 17. I believe it's verse 26, and I am right. From one man, Paul is talking to the Athenian philosophers on Mars Hill, the brightest minds in the world, right? At least they think they are. They have not shied away from that glory. Okay. From one man he made every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth, the exact places where they shall live. God did so that these men would seek Him and perhaps reach out to Him and find Him, though He is not far from any one of us. Because he's about to talk about the temple to the unknown God. But he determined the time set for them. They were born at the right time and in the exact place. So that's just a confirmation of how exacting God is. We can take that to heart. We were born at the right time and we're in the right place to do what God has for us to do. And so that should be an encouragement that Paul was for Paul, Paul discerned what he was. But now let's come back to that question of, it's really election of the saints. But let me read a passage prior to it to give you a principle that is a good one to be aware of in your own reading of Revelation, because I call it a self-interpreting aspect of the book of Revelation. You don't have to guess. It's the Revelation's own interpretation of itself. Now here's what I'm saying. Now I'll read the passage.
Where are you?
Yeah,
Revelation 4,
Revelation.
beginning at verse 1. Sorry, yeah. Yep. 4:1. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 5:1. That's Segula, 5:1. He's got a vision of the throne room of heaven. 5:1. Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, "Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?" But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it. I wept and wept because there was no one found who was worthy to open the scroll and look inside it. Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." Then I saw a lamb. Now this hearing, seeing pattern occurs in other places. In other words, if he had just seen the lamb, it's one thing. What he needed to know before he saw the lamb was that the lamb was God's lion. It's a self-interpreting principle, right? So if you use that, you see what I mean by that? That he says he's looking for a lion to come roaring in, and a little lamb trots up to the throne. This is the guy that's going to conquer the world. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, to me, it's just a perfect image of when Jesus arrived as a baby.
Yeah.
And what they thought it was going to be a white stallion and a king, and this is how we're going to get saved. And instead,
that's right.
It was a baby in a manger.
Right. So now let's go to chapter 7. 144,000 are going to be sealed by God. After this, 7:1. After this, I saw 4 angels standing in the 4 corners of the earth. And by the way, I'm coming, I think, back to your question. Holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on land or sea or any tree. Then I saw another angel coming down from the east, having a seal of the living God, and he called out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who have been given power to harm the land and the sea, "Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we have put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of God." Now this goes back to Ezekiel. Yeah, so Ezekiel has this, somebody sent to the city of Jerusalem to seal the people that have been faithful. Yeah. So this is what he's doing. But he's going now through the world.
Right.
Yeah. He's going to the world. And he says, until we have put the seal on forehead of God. Then I heard the Lion of Judah. I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. Now, they aren't the historic tribes. This is not Israel of old, because Joseph, who's in the list, is not a tribe in the Old Testament. Manasseh and Ephraim, his sons are. And so this is a different list. So those who say that this is Israel that's being sealed have not read the list carefully. And then after this, I looked. Okay, he heard 144,000. Now he looks to see what he heard, right? And what does he see? 144,000? No. He sees before me a great multitude that no one could count, from every tribe, every nation, every tribe, every people. So, the point of giving 144,000 is saying that numberless multitude to us, he knows every hair on every head and every one. It's a symbolic way of showing how exact God is. that hearing-seeing pattern helps because it's its own interpretive and not somebody's laid upon it. See, what you hear is the meaning of what you're going to see. Yeah. Okay?
Well, so
Yeah.
I'm going to show my ignorance of the book, but can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
No, not you.
So, I mean, maybe I'm going right for the juggler, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
So, where is it that that rapture theology comes from?
Okay.
That idea, and I haven't read Revelation recently. 20? Is it
Well,
Revelation 20?
I don't think it comes from 20. I think it comes from an assumption that in the book of Revelation that comes from other passages of Scripture.
Okay.
I think the assumption is that the entire story to the churches and the church age ends at the end of chapter 3. And that in the beginning of chapter 4, this is all future. And that at the beginning of chapter 4, the argument is made, you no longer hear the church mentioned, though that's not true. At the very end, it's mentioned. But that's a kind of not worth arguing about, kind of. But it's an assumption from the fact that they don't find the word church after chapter 4 on through the end of chapter 20. And they say that's because the church has gone. It's been taken out of the world, and this is all the troubles of the world. But then it has some interior problems with that theology, because where did the 144,000 come from?
With somebody just last weekend, though, I had a very rousing conversation about this, and before next Saturday, I'm going to make sure I read Revelation. But she pointed to a specific verse and said, "Well, how do you explain this when these people are taken to heaven and the others are left?" And I guess I need to ask her, unless anyone knows what verse that someone would refer to.
Chapter 3:10.
Again, you're talking about in the rapture. So here we are sitting.
Sort of
the rapture happens right now,
that's how she
and
interpreted
I'm here
it.
alone.
Yeah.
Everybody else in the room is gone.
And as I was
Right.
talking about it, and then she said, well, and I said, well, this is how I understand it. And then she said, well, how do you explain this verse? And she rattled it off. And I was
Is it
like,
this one, Andrea? Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that's going to come to the whole earth, the whole world, to test the inhabitants of the
something
earth.
about. I mean, she
Could be.
said it,
Could
but
be
it was
that.
Revelation
really
3:10.
taken.
Yeah.
So I'll have to ask the question again and bring it back next week.
Well, I won't. I'm not going. I mean, I know generally the theories. I've read Will Lindsay's book, and he based it a lot on his professor's work, who was a very strong dispensationalist. But so I'm familiar up to that point. But I really believe this that I'm sharing with you is the key to unlocking what John wrote. And so I haven't paid a great deal of attention. No, but I'll still say a couple of things about it.
All right.
That are just general. One of the, and again, you correct me, by the way, if you have you're very familiar with the other teaching, that's fine. And I may be misrepresenting it because I'm not that exact with it myself. But I understand that for some at least, the picture in or the words, let me put it this way, the description that Paul gives to the Thessalonians about the coming of Christ is one of the passages used for the rapture, right? Yeah. Well, let me just say something about that. It's chapter 4, verses 13 and following. For I received from the Lord, no, it's not that way. I would not have you ignorant, brethren, concerning those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others do, who have no hope. For I believe that Jesus died and rose again. Even so, with Jesus, God will bring those who have fallen asleep.
Yes.
And then he goes on to say, the Lord will descend with a shout of command, with the trumpet of the archangel, with a shout of the, and the dead in Christ will rise first. And we who are left will be, will be with the Lord. Now that's the passage, generally. So, okay. So, the thing of it is, that was preached on by Chrysostom in the 3rd century A.D. And he never saw a rapture in there, and he was in that general. What he said about the passage was that Paul is using, as he does in other places, something out of the Roman experience, the Roman culture, to illustrate the coming of Christ. He does it in Corinthians when he says, we are like so many captives in God's triumphal train. And the emperor would come into the town, be followed by his troops, followed by his captives, but he always had priests. And the priests would throw incense to the crowd. And if you were one of the cities that belonged to the conquerors, that was sweet incense. But if you were in a captive city and you've been taken, that stunk in your nostrils. Because, it depended on who you were, right? Yeah. And Paul's saying that's what our gospel does. Those who are called, it's a sweet smell. And those who aren't, it stinks in their nostrils. Yeah. So he's using something they understood. Well, when the emperor did come, to Thessalonica, that was on the Appian Way. The Ignatian Way. So anyway, and he won victories out in the east, out in Persia. And he would come back with his legions and his captives and their loot and their priests. And when they approached a city, just like they do today, actually, the governor of the province and the mayor of the city or the whatever his title was, they would all go out and meet the emperor and come in with him. It was to their glory, just like Governor Connolly went out and met JFK at the airport, right? Love Field. And he drove in with him to Dallas. Remember that? Yeah, I do too. So anyway, that's what Paul is picturing. He knows this, so he says, well, wait, when the King of Kings comes, where does he get his dignitaries? He gets them from the grave because they belong to him. So he raises them from the dead. And if they're still alive, he still calls them. But he doesn't take them to heaven. He's not going to heaven. He's coming to judge. They're coming to the earth with him, not to heaven. That's not the picture. And it wouldn't make any sense. He's not coming to get them out of trouble. They're dead. They're out of trouble now. They're not going to get persecuted. No, he's calling them to be honored with him in his return to the earth. So to use that for the rapture has no bearing because it's not rapture in that sense. It's retrieving his own, but it's not getting them out of something.
And
it's
bringing. That is a perfect illustration of heaven coming to earth.
Yeah.
Which is the reconciliation that will happen, which is a little bit different than sometimes what we imagine.
Yeah. But that's how Chrysostom dealt with it.
Sorry. So then, it doesn't matter which of the three views that are, I won't say in question, but the three views that are presented. It really doesn't matter which of the three that you're with. It's all the same in all three of those.
No. So this 1 Thessalonians 4, which is what which is what you quoted. He's so quick with the Bible, it's hard to keep up. 1 Thessalonians 4 is what I heard you quote.
That's right. Yeah. Verse 13 and following.
Yeah. It's verse 13 and following.
No, but I mean
no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's where this pre and post tribulation rapture thinking comes from. But the text that I'm reading here, it says, those that are still alive and remain on the earth will be caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. That's what he's referring to when the dignitaries came out to greet JFK and then drove back into the city.
Then they come with the Lord.
Yeah. What he said, the verse then says, then we will be with the Lord forever. And so it doesn't say that they're going up or down, but the interpretation, as I understand it, is with this rapture, you go on to this heavenly cloud space.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And my belief in what I think we're talking about is this is heaven coming to earth, and we're gathering with him for this final judgment. Those of us who are in Christ are being gathered together with him, first the dead, then those of us who are still alive, to then come back and be a part of that judgment. The next, like when the sheep and the goats, when things are you in, are you out? Like that.
One of the things that might be helpful to think about, and you have to think about these things, I'm presenting things that probably you're not about. if you take Revelation, or since I take Revelation as symbolic by its own declaration, that's my first option. Now, if there's something in here that's stated, like at the Church of Philadelphia, you lost Antipas, I don't think that's symbolic. I think Antipas got killed for his faith. You know, yeah, it's historical. But where it's not a factual matter, my default position, let's call it that, is that it's symbolic because it's told me to look for a symbol. It's told me that that's the structure of the book. So if that's true, and you think about what I just said about, Paul saying the Lord will come, he will gather his dignitaries, which are believers, he will then set up his throne and judge the earth, and his own will be with him in glory. If that is true, then it fits Ezekiel and it fits Revelation. And I'll tell you why. And in some ways, now I don't want to press this too far, but in some ways, well, at least there's a lot of allusions to Ezekiel in Revelation. A lot. Gog and Magog are in Ezekiel. Ezekiel opens with a vision of God reveals himself like he does to John on Patmos.
Yeah, an Old Testament book, Ezekiel.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay, so just
No, forgive me, I never read the whole thing.
No. But that is what it is.
Yeah.
I was called out of Ezekiel. I was my friend.
yeah.
But that's right. I'll just tell you, it opens with a vision, like is it Revelation does. It has a vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, where it's a symbol, really itself, of raising the dead who belong to Christ. Mm-hmm. And then Gog and Magog come in to fight this, kind of like the resurgence at the end.
Yeah,
right?
They're names of
These are
enemies,
all in Ezekiel.
Armies.
They were just armies in the ancient world.
Yeah.
And then the book ends, however, with a long, extended passage, about 10 chapters, on the New Jerusalem. And you see Jerusalem reconstructed, and you see and that's how Revelation ends. But in Revelation, I think, now this is interpreted, but I think we are the New Jerusalem. It's not really a city coming down, it's the Church of Christ coming down. And the reason I think so is not because I'm guessing, but because the light in the city is Christ inside. And isn't that the point all the way through? Christ in you, the hope of glory. You are dwelling, Paul can't use the words in Christ enough, and Christ in you. And when you see the city of Jerusalem coming down, if it's a symbol, then it's massive, it's beautiful, it's everything you'd ever imagine. The Eden is recreated in it, and then the light. No need for lamps now. Christ is in the midst. Yeah. And that's how Revelation begins itself. Christ, if you read that, Christ is seen walking among the lampstands. Now, that's the beginning of Revelation. And what you have in the Old Testament is a connectedness of the tribes. You get 12 tribes of Israel, and they're connected governmentally. So you have, they're represented by branches of a candlestick that are all connected to a base. But when Christ appears, that candlestick's gone, and now you have separate candlesticks, and the connecting thing is Christ himself. He's walking in the midst of it. So I'm just trying to show you how the symbolism works. See?
So do you feel like the way you just described the candlestick was fascinating? Do you also feel that the reason that imagery was used was because of this idea of the light?
I'm sorry. I did the first of what you said. I missed it. That's all.
No, that's okay. Okay. I said,
Yeah.
first of all, I was complimenting. I said that was a very fascinating description of the light inside, and then and then the candlesticks. And what I was wondering was, do you think that the reason that it was the symbol of the candlestick was because of this idea of the light?
Oh yeah.
Inside, so that there's no need for a candlestick anymore because now we are dwelling with Christ completely. Like
you're one with him. Yeah, and our country, can I take it aside? I do a thing on Christian radio in Boston. I'm on every day of the week, and I get to speak 12 times a day to the 3 stations in Boston. Boston is a very influential city. So we got Harvard sitting across the water, and I practice that at night. Miriam. And so I do a 1 minute spot every day of the week. And this I brought to give you an example because I'm talking about this being all signal to us. A symbol is a signal. You can't drive your car much of anywhere if there's no signs. Imagine we drove from Moscow 200 miles to Ivanovo, Russia, in the dark, in the winter, while it's raining and half snowing, and no white lines on the road. And it was terrifying. I said, how does this guy know where he's going? But when I drive here, there's a solid line. They don't have to explain it to me. It's a sign to me, don't pass. But then I hit a broken line. That's a sign to me, pass. When I see a upside down V with red, I know I got to yield. The signs tell me everything.
Yeah.
And that's what Revelation is. Revelation is the signs to find your way through the present age. Right? That's what it is.
To present age, not
No.
that fearful
No.
rapture.
No, the age during which the gospel is free to roam the whole world and get people from every tribe and tongue and nation.
I gotta be honest when I say that. To me, the book of Revelation has always symbolized the end times where
Yeah.
that
No, that's
you
very-
say Revelation and that automatically is rapture, and like I said,
Oh, yeah.
poof, you guys are gone and I'm sitting here. But the cinnamon rolls stay. So, good for me.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to bet you that most of all of us started right there.
I think
yeah.
for a lot, I mean, I'm not speaking for everyone, obviously,
Yeah.
but I know for me and many of the people that I know in my life, that's what it's equated to. So.
Yeah, no, it kind of is the fulfillment of the book of Genesis. What was planted in Genesis is reaped in Revelation. The garden that was lost in Genesis is recovered in generation. Christ has done the work. He has come into the world. He has conquered the world. He has conquered in such a way that he inhabits the life of his own people. And so it's symbolic because it's not restricted to any particular generation or time. It's symbolic, so it counts for the whole age. Anybody, the first century people got something out of it, we do. The symbols allow that. If it was talking about Nero and something he did, well, kind of, so what? It's interesting, but Nero's long gone. Yeah. Let me. I'll just because of the light thing.
Yeah.
But I wrote this down to give you a sample of what I do, and the reason I do it is what I want to explain. I call it American Signpost. It's on Boston Radio every day. But I'm basing it on the fact that the people who founded this country, the settlers, the Puritans, came here and the governor preached to them a sermon, and he said, people, they were on a boat. They hadn't set foot. The Indians were here, Native Americans. They were here. They hadn't climbed the wilderness. This was a statement of faith. He says, we have been sent here to light the world. They didn't even have cell phones. How are they going to do it? We are sent here to light the world. We are a city on a hill and a light to the world. Now, the president that picked that up that I had a chance to actually meet was Reagan. Reagan, that was one of his favorite phrases, if you were in Reagan's era. Light to the world, city on a hill. Yeah. Well, so I'm on radio every day, and that's what I'm on to every day. If America's going to be what it's meant to be, the only thing God wants us to be is a light. If we're anything else, we'd be trained. Yeah. So here's the kind of thing I do. I reassure you, give a sample. 1 minute. It's a free country. These words were on my mother's tongue so frequently that freedom seemed like it came natural to Americans. It did not. It came supernaturally. It was carried in the hands of the planters of the nation. The first settlers came carrying Bibles. In that book, they believed God revealed his will. To them, the law of God trumped the laws made by men. These were laws that made for a good and glorious world because they were laws promulgated by a great and glorious God. This great glorious God became a man in Jesus Christ and gave himself on a cross to save sinners. He came to set us free from the power of sin and the prospect of death. Whether my mother knew it or not, his victory was behind the boast that she made that this is a free country. I am Pastor William Boylan. This is an American signpost. That goes out into Boston. That will go out. That's for the week of the 28th through September 1st. And that'll be spoken in Boston 4 times a day on 3 stations. Yeah, for the whole week. Yeah, and so that's but that's a sign. That's our point. This is it's called signpost, American signpost. Yeah.
I'm just curious the way that you reframed what I heard my dad say as far as really the way that we have been, I think the way Revelation's been reframed this morning is that it's so much bigger than these 3 different small definitions of it. And I'm curious, what does it do with the fact that, like you said, when I think about it, this is the way it's always been framed in rapture terms, the end. This is, how has this discussion, like, has it? Or, I mean, is your, like, you know.
Well, again, I'm probably pretty lucky in that because I don't know it. So I haven't been taught, let's say, my upbringing into Christianity was raised in a Christian home with, definitely brokenness, but, the Bible is taught that, Jesus was a man, he was persecuted and then crucified, and then 3 days later he rose, and if you believe that, you go to heaven. God has a plan for you. I don't know what that is. God's got a plan for you, live with it. Right? And, that's pretty much it. Like, literally, that's it. So, as an adult, then, there's more to it than that. And I feel that it's my responsibility to learn it so that I can even piecemeal teach it. Because I don't feel like I shouldn't, obviously, if I would just say, well, the book of Revelations is all about the rapture and end times, I would have misspoke. And so I need to learn, if nothing else, for my own peace of mind, but if there's ever a need for me to tell anybody else, as a leader of my family, etc. Okay. So I'm lucky in that I don't know it, so I don't have to unlearn it.
Yeah.
This is
you don't have any
teaching for me.
now.
Right. So I'm open-minded enough, and that's again a gift, I think, that I am able to listen to all of it. I don't have a specific view, pre-post, or a millennial. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just searching for knowledge. So
let me, since we're coming closer to close, let me do something.
Yep.
Let me just give you an image to take away. Because again, I guess we're going to meet next week. I'm happy to do it, certainly. Let me give you this image and see if it's helpful. Think of it like a stack of papers, okay? The book of Revelation, a stack of 3 messages, 7 messages, 7 sections, that I named. And think of it this way, that as you peel off one, you see what's behind it. As you peel off the other, you see what's behind it. So let me just suggest again, summarize it. The first level is pretty much on the surface, right to the church at Ephesus. People could run there, but they could drive to Ephesus. There were real people there. So these are the messages. You got trouble, Ephesus, you've left your first love. And it goes through the 7 churches. Now, why would you say something like that? Well, I'll tell you, because I'll show you now who's really sitting on the throne of the world. So you get John drawn up into heaven, and he sees, or he hears first, that the Lion of Judah has conquered the world. And he discovers that it's a slain lamb. Wow! And the slain lamb begins to unfold the purpose of history. That's what's in the scroll. The scroll has human destiny in it, and it's not going to happen until the seals are broken, until it can be read, because God performs His word. But until you can get it open and read the words, God's not going to do anything, right? That's what it's written. It's just very compact. It's the will of God. That's what a will is in the ancient world. A will was written on both sides, and it was kept very small, and it was sealed. He's got the will of God sealed, and somebody's got to break it if we're going to have it. The Lamb can do it. The Lamb has the authority, and he breaks the seals. And when he breaks the seals, trouble comes forth, because it's a troubled world, and he's going to use the troubles to his advantage. And he sends forth war, famine, pestilence, death, boom. All of these things come forth because they're going to shake the world and begin to make it pay attention to reality. They've been living in a fool's paradise, and he pulls that away. Now he shows you that they aren't just troubles. They are troubles with a purpose. They are warnings, because the big trouble is facing, the real problem we face is not people and tribulation, it's God. He's the real trouble, because he is holy and we are not. And he is not going to allow unholiness to exist in his world. There will be no more crying, no more tears, no more anything that has to do with evil. He's eradicating it. And if that's something not done for us, he'll eradicate us too. So these seals, when they're broken, give warning. They're trumpets. But at the same time, so you're going back to the beginning and going through with the trumpet. Now you pull that away, and he takes you a little deeper into heaven itself, and you see the woman clothed in glory who's bringing forth a male child, who is the King of Kings and Lord. It's identified as Christ. And then when this one comes forth, now bowls are being poured out, and the troubles deepen, and they affect vast portions of the earth. And then when that's over, another thing is pulled aside, and you begin to see the destruction of evil. You see what's happening to the believers are safe. They're sealed with seven. They're sealed on the forehead. They are 144,000, which simply means God knows every one of them, not that the actual number. It's a symbol. See, it's 12 times 12 to that thousandth that's over in chapter 20. It's a way of saying all of them. That's what 1,000 stands for, the whole thing. See, so that's what he looks and he sees. He doesn't see 144,000. He sees nobody can count them. It's the whole thing. So then when you read chapters 15 and 16, you see that this beast of the sea and the beast of the comes out of the earth. You read, you'll see them. They are human government and human philosophy and all the things that are so ruinous. He deals with them. Then he gets down in chapter 17 through 19, and he always drops back to Christ being born, one way or another, and ends with Christ in judgment. So it's the whole shebang, the whole thing. And when he gets to the end of 19, in the judgment, then he starts over again. This time he starts with Jesus binding Satan on the cross. So the binding of Satan for 1,000 years is the cross. The cross binds him. And once the cross is an accomplishment, then Christ has won. He can go into the whole world and gather people for himself from every tribe, tongue, and nation, because the devil can't deceive them any longer. And then this one ends not just in judgment, but in glory, because Jerusalem comes out of heaven. So if you can think of it as pulling away, you get deeper and deeper and deeper till you get to New Jerusalem.
So actually, and I realize this is extrapolating, but the way you just described it, in the order that you described it, very likely, maybe, that Jesus has bound Satan until he finds his people, and then in this bringing it all together portion, it is very much like C.S. Lewis's last battle, that as he releases Satan and he's brought his people in and we are sealed, there's going to be this cataclysmic experience of bringing it all together, and Satan will be vanquished, and his authority will be fully.
But probably, because I don't know,
right.
Probably the reason at the end for that fury,
yeah.
He just had his kingdom destroyed. Satan, Christ has destroyed his kingdom.
Right, but to me, that is a little bit, well, actually very different from this idea about wandering and just being persecuted randomly because God just released Satan and he's out there just, batting his people. It's way different to visualize it more as that battle and that finality, because even in that, I know in people that describe their persecution now, there's this sense of, but one day it will be completed, and he's promised me it will be completed, and I can endure this because of that happening. And that to me is different, and maybe it is because of the perceptions and silly movies or whatever, but that idea of sort of wandering and Satan's just going, around every tree trying to get you and trap you and get your kids, and and it's a real fear based.
Let me close with a passage of scripture.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
That I think might be very helpful, and it isn't just directly on Revelation, but everything applies to everything in the Bible. It's God's word. But Jesus suffered the greatest tribulation because he was innocent. If it wasn't that other people hadn't been crucified, but nobody experienced his pain like an innocent person. We get hardened by our suffering, but Jesus was not hardened. He went through pain like we couldn't not imagine on the cross. Now, if you know why he quoted the Psalm 22 verse 1, which says, my God, why have you forsaken me? When you understand what that psalm is all about, it throws light on what you're talking about. So if you read it, it's a long psalm, and it changes in its direction in verse 22. So if you read it, be aware in verse 22, you've changed direction. Something has happened. It begins like this. The psalm begins, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me? Dogs surround me, evildoers, they pierce my hands and my feet. By the way, David wrote that in the year 1000 BC. It was 700 BC, 300 years later, before crucifixion came in. Jews stoned people. Where did the idea ever come from that somebody would be crucified? God. He alone knew. Nobody knew anything about it till then. Yeah. So you have pierced my hands and my feet. Dogs surround me. Evil do, and my tongue cleaves to my jaw. It was a description of a man dying on a cross in Psalm 22, which Jesus is dying, and he quotes it. Now, the people hearing it are not like us who don't know verse by verse the whole Bible. So, but they did. And they knew he wasn't saying, God, you've left me. He wasn't saying anything like that. He was quoting the psalmist. And they knew the whole psalm. And the whole psalm says that, in a sense, because of what I'm going through, I will proclaim your name to my brethren in the great congregation. Psalm 22 and following. He expects to rise from the dead. He expects to be alive after his crucifixion. He expects to be active. I mean, if you read that, and that's what he's telling the people there. If you have faith enough to believe, don't go by what you think you see on the surface, me dying. Because the truth is, I am going to be much more alive at the end of this than I've ever been before. I'll be freed of everything that hinders me now, where I have to act like you must act because I'm in your place. Then I'll be free to be me. And that's what he's saying in Psalm 22. I cringe when I hear pastors say, even Jesus began to doubt his Father. That is not the case. He couldn't have put more faith in his Father. His Father was going to raise him from the dead, and he knew it while he was being crucified.
I'm going to break right here just because we're at the 10 o'clock mark.
Yep.
And so let's give Pastor Boyle an applause.
I'll take a cinnamon roll. No, I don't.
Well, you can get
no,
one.
I don't.
So,
I could drink a cup of coffee.
Next week, we're going to continue on. I think Sue might be